Welcome to this Whitehall Explainer. Let's jump straight in. Today, we're breaking down the precise U.S. CGMP requirements for pharmaceutical equipment, specifically looking at 21 CFR 211 Subpart D. Now, if you work in operations, quality, or engineering, you already know that equipment isn't just a bunch of hardware, right? It is literally the heartbeat of your manufacturing process. So let's dive into exactly what the regulations demand.
The foundational mantra for this entire subpart is beautifully simple but absolutely uncompromising. If a piece of equipment makes the drug, it must be rigorously qualified and strictly controlled. There is zero gray area here. Every single bolt, every contact surface, and every digital interface has to be proven suitable for its intended use well before it ever touches a commercial product. To make sure you're fully inspection ready, we're going to systematically work our way through 6 key areas: design and location, contact surfaces, cleaning procedures, automatic systems, filters, and finally, we'll wrap up with audit risks.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Design, Size, and Location under Section 211.63.
It's actually fascinating how the FDA translates really basic engineering principles into strict regulatory requirements. Basically, your equipment has to be fundamentally appropriate for its intended use and correctly sized. Think about it. If your capacity is constantly stretched to the limit, your risk of error just skyrockets. And it doesn't stop at size. Machinery has to be located to enable logical material flow. That means materials should move smoothly through the suite without any cross-traffic that could cause mix-ups. Plus, you need ample physical space around the machinery so operators can actually get in there to safely clean and maintain it. Oh, and a golden CGMP rule to remember: every single piece of equipment must have its own unique identification tag.
Moving right along to Section 2, Non-Reactive Contact Surfaces under Section 211.65.
The operational mandate here is absolute. Contact surfaces must never be reactive, additive, or absorptive. Just think about the implications of that for a second. The equipment cannot chemically react with the drug product, it can't add any trace substances like metals or residues, and it absolutely cannot absorb any of the active pharmaceutical ingredient. If it did, you're immediately looking at yield loss or worse, a dangerous carryover into your next batch.
This really illustrates how that non-reactive rule bleeds straight into everyday maintenance. Take lubricants, for instance. They are obviously essential for the machinery to run, but they must never touch the product. You need physical barriers, or at least food-grade lubricants, anywhere there's even a remote risk. Also, your gaskets and seals, they have to be made of fully qualified materials and replaced on a strict, documented schedule before they start degrading. And if you're using coatings like Teflon, they have to be demonstrably inert, with all the qualification paperwork on file to prove it.
Section 3 brings us to cleaning and maintenance procedures, covering the Section 211.67 requirements.
The crucial thing to understand here is that cleaning isn't just about making stainless steel look shiny. It is a highly controlled, scientific process. It all starts with written SOPs and approved non-contaminating agents. Now, if you're running multi-products equipment, that cleaning process needs rigorous validation. You also have to enforce defined maximum clean and dirty hold times. Basically, how long can the equipment sit dirty before the residue gets too hard to clean? And how long can it sit clean before you have to re-clean it just to be safe? Finally, every single cycle needs a post-cleaning visual inspection, and those logs must be properly signed and verified. No exceptions.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, Validating Automatic Electronic Systems under 211.68.
In today's digital environment, you really have to build a fortress around your data. Every automated system must be validated for its intended use, and calibration has to be strictly scheduled and traceable to known standards. But data integrity is the real cornerstone here. You need strict role-based authorization, meaning operators only access exactly what they need to do their jobs, and they definitely shouldn't have the admin rights to tweak a recipe. You also have to maintain a traceable audit trail where all changes are routinely reviewed. And this last one is huge. Your backup and recovery procedures must be actively tested, because let's be honest, a backup you've never actually tried to restore is really just a wish.
Down to Section 5, Filters and Sterile Products under Section 211.72.
The regulations here are incredibly distinct. If you're manufacturing sterile products, your filters must exclusively be non-fiber releasing. I mean, obviously we can't have particulate matter shutting into a sterile injectable, right? But beyond that, for all products, filter integrity must be tested both before and after use. You need hard, documented proof that the filter was intact before we started the batch, and equally solid proof that it didn't rupture at some point during the process.
Finally, Section 6, Audit Risks and Quality Discipline, looking at the interface between operations and quality.
A truly successful facility relies on this seamless, almost frictionless interface between operations and quality assurance. Operations has to flawlessly execute the approved procedures out on the floor, whilst quality handles the independent decision-making and batch release. Every single person needs to be fully trained on every procedure they touch, and if you want to make an update, you need formal approval from the quality control unit through change control. Ultimately, documentation is a shared responsibility. The end goal here is a culture where inspection readiness is just a continuous state of being, not some frantic fire drill the week before the FDA shows up.
So what actually gets people in trouble during an inspection? Looking at common FDA Form 483 citations, we frequently see incomplete cleaning validation, which you can mitigate with a robust risk-based matrix. We also see citations for past due calibrations whilst equipment is still being used. The quick fix there is implementing automated alerts and physical status tags. Unqualified contact surfaces are a massive red flag, so always keep your material qualification records readily on file. Unvalidated automatic systems are going to require a strict CSV protocol, usually aligned with a GAMP5 category. And missing filter integrity tests? You can solve that simply by hardwiring pre- and post-use checks directly into your batch workflows so they can't be skipped.
All right, before we wrap up this explainer, let's do a quick knowledge check to see what's stuck. Section 211.65 requires equipment contact surfaces to be A. cheap and readily available, B. not reactive, additive, or absorptive, C. made of any approved material, or D. replaced annually. Take a second and lock in your answer.
Did you get it? The correct answer is, of course, B. It's a really vital reminder that your equipment surfaces must never be allowed to contaminate the drug product or absorb your active ingredients.
Just to lock everything in, let's quickly review the essential takeaways. Equipment has to be properly designed, sized, and located. Contact surfaces must be entirely inert. Cleaning requires strict written SOPs and logs. Your digital and automatic systems must be fully validated. Sterile filters cannot release fibers and absolutely must be integrity tested. And your calibration discipline? That is completely non-negotiable. So, thinking about your own facility right now, I want to leave you with this. If an FDI inspector walked onto your floor today, is your operational equipment in a state of continuous, unquestionable inspection readiness, or are you just hoping they don't look too closely?